how would our community look different if we took grief work seriously, especially for young children? Thinking especially about community institutions, places like preschools and schools and churches and funeral homes and a whole host of organizations in community settings. From your perspectives, what would be different?
I can maybe give a small view of that based on the work that we're trying to do in schools, and it's kind of a tiered approach in terms of we're going to be offering peer groups, but we're also going to be hopefully changing culture to have peers supporting peers in that space, having the caring adults supporting the peers and also supporting the caring adults if they're grieving as well. So having a caring community in creating another safe space outside of the caring place or Drew's Hope or Camp Koala, but having multiple places where kids can feel safe processing their grief. So it might be that in best case scenario, those culture changes that are made, we're looking at a child who has a parent die being met by peers who know that and are there to support them, greet them when they come in after that funeral is over, and when they're coming back into school, so that they're not feeling alone and isolated and they've got immediate support of kids their own age. That's just one example and something that we're kind of hoping for in a culture shift, so to speak.
One thing I often hear from people, I'm sure you hear it a lot too, is I never know what to say. I don't know what to say to this person after their loss. And I often tell them about a story when I was in high school, and I didn't go back to school for about 2 weeks, and it was right before I graduated. So my parents made me go back the last week of school so I could take my finals. And it was, I used the term contagious. I felt like I was contagious because I was just avoided by, even my best friends just didn't know how to even be with me. And I remember going down the hall, and I was walking by myself, and my teacher was in the hall, and it was my favorite teacher, and he was just the kind of teacher that got people and understood. And he just was walking towards me, and I thought, oh no, how am I going to keep it together? How am I going to, I just thought, oh no. And he didn't say a word. He just came up to me and gave me a really big hug. And that was it. And I went on my way. And that made all the difference that very first day back. You don't have to say anything if you can't, but sometimes just a touch or a hug, and you don't have to say anything, can make, the difference 25 years later. That I still remember that person in that day.
I think the same thing happened for us. Like I said, I was in the hospital in Norfolk for a week, and 2 ambulance drivers from Shippensburg on their own took the Shippensburg ambulance to Norfolk, paid for their own night in a hotel so that they could get me out by a certain time in the morning because I had to be checked in at Chambersburg by a certain time in the afternoon. Wow, what amazing support. They knew I was coming home in a wheelchair. 2 guys from my church, without us asking, had the wheelchair ramp built on my house. Other people knew I had planted a garden with Drew before we left on that vacation. I was in a neck brace for 2 months. I was walking with a cane. There was no way I was getting out to my garden. They kept it weeded so I could find the plants that we had planted together. I think when a community just gets it and they just support you, and I said that's the beauty of living in a small town. I don't know how I would have survived our loss had I lived in some major city where nobody knew me, but having, well, one, we had a very supportive family, but then we had a very supportive church family. My husband's cousin came in from California to be with us during that time. He drove Randy home for the first time. It was about 2 weeks after the accident, to get clothes and stuff like that at our house, and he passes a sign that says car wash to support the Taylors. And John says, is that your kids from your church? And my husband said, I've never seen those kids before in my life. They were just supporting us. So I think when people learn more about grief, when they learn that it's not always, don't say, do you need, call me if you need anything. I was too exhausted to pick up the phone, but it was just people who were willing to give of their time, to give of their money, to give of, whatever it was we needed. It was just done, and we didn't ask for it, and that was beautiful, and that really supported us through those first weeks and months. It's when you don't have to ask for the help and it just comes from a loving community. I think that's what it would look like if people knew more about it.